Welcome to another FMRI webinar series that in May 2021. This webinar is a partnership with the WTS, Women Transportation Seminar, FAQ Student Chapter. It's our pleasure to introduce Frederico from Brazil. Dr. Frederico Rodrigues is the founding partner of ImTraff, a consulting company in Brazil in the area of transportation and traffic engineering. He's civil engineer with a PhD in transportation engineering and master degree in urban engineering. He's an international consultant, having coordinated over 550 projects in 8 different countries. He's also a former professor of highway engineering on graduate level courses, published around 45 papers internationally. Thank you, Dr. Rodrigues. I'm looking forward for your presentation.
Well, I thank you guys for having me for this invitation. It's a pleasure for us to share with you guys a little bit of our knowledge and our vision of mobility in developing countries. So let's begin to start about our subject today. So our proposal, we are going to talking about urban mobility plan in developing countries. So first of all, just to share with you guys some information about us, we have the pleasure of being one of the largest traffic and transport engineering companies here in Brazil. And a little bit more than that, I can say that we are one of the largest in South America as well. Well, here are the countries that you had already worked in the world, and as the professor has said to us, I have already worked in more than 550 projects in different areas, such as mobility, urban mobility, traffic safety, road design, among others. But our goal here, just one more. Well, we are accredited on this methodology that it's IRAP. It's a methodology to work with traffic safety, and we have done a lot of projects with this methodology here in Brazil. But the principal thing here is the most important. It's our lecture, not just make advertisement. So let's talk about urban mobility. First of all, urban mobility, as I wrote in this screen, one of the needs of an urban life. So it's really it's something that it's really, really important for us in the life of a city. And when you think about urban mobility, I think that we should ask some questions. For example, how easy, safe, inclusive, and sustainable is to move within a city for any reason from a point A to a point B? We can ask another question. How much the urban mobility conditions are prepared to make people's life easier in developing countries? And once that I have a feeling and I know what we're going to talk about some issues, about some problems, we could ask another question. And what are we doing concerning that? Concerning to urban mobility in developing countries. Okay, how did our urban mobility problems begin? So here we have an image of my hometown in 1927. In the middle of the screen, we can see our city, our area, our urban area. And of course, with the time, some years later, our city grew a little bit. And check here that we have a part of our city that it's separated from our central area. And this was specific, the industrial area. And in this point, we can think a little bit our conception of urban planning. Long years ago, some time ago, long years, the people, they didn't like to live close to their jobs, to their work, because it wasn't healthy. The place where the people used to work 100 years ago, it wasn't like we have today. So the people had this perception in their mind. So it was better to live away from our job. So this is one point that start to bring us some problems about urban mobility, that we need to have trips from different points of our city. But let's continue with our city. In 1950, our city is a little bit bigger. The growth, it's continuing. And in 1960, the growth is continuing. And this happens for long years until we start to think, well, I think that this growth is not happening in the best way. We maybe should have done something. And we start to realize that we should have planned our growth. And in this moment, we had a big city with different people live in different places, with different locations to work, and they have to every day make trips from one point to another point with their cars or maybe in public transport. But this happened without any planet. And this is the origin of our urban mobility issues. And now, here we can see in this screen some cities from developing countries in the peak hour or in the rush hour. And I know that this has happened even here or even in the US. We have a lot of congestions, we have a lot of traffic jams. This city, São Paulo, is the biggest city in South America. It's here in Brazil. This city, Belo Horizonte, it's one of the best cities in the country, in Brazil. And not coincidentally, it's my city. It's where I live. And we have some other examples of traffic jam and traffic problems. And about this one, Santo Domingo, the capital of Dominican Republic, we're going to discuss a little bit more in the next screen. But more than that, we have some things, some curiosities in developing countries that it's nice to see. It's funny to see. So, for example, maybe this is the idea of carpooling, car sharing. It's a little bit weird, but look how many people do we have in just one motorcycle. In this picture, we have 9 people. It's kind of weird. It's thinking about traffic safety. No one is using protection for their head. And another idea of carpooling, of course, I'm just joking, but and about the freight transport, we have some interesting things that happens here. I mean here, not here just in Brazil, but in several different countries. And for those who stops their car in forbidden places, just thinking, oh, I'm going to spend just 5 minutes. I'm just going to the bank. I'm just going to get some food. Have you already realized the problems that just one lane blocked for a couple of minutes can cause in our traffic operation? So here in this video, we have the same amount of cars in the left lane, in the right, in the left lanes and on the right lanes. But on the left, we have one lane blocked, just for example, for one car stopped or anything else. And it's easy to understand how it's easy to get a traffic jam. And how about the respecting to the speed limits of the roads. Well, unfortunately, this doesn't happen how we would like to happen. The people need to respect a little bit more the speed limits, and we have some funny maids like this one that we can see. But anyway, joking or not, the point is we have a lot of issues to solve in developing countries, and we're going to discuss about this on the next screens. And sometimes the city can laugh on us. For example, this image, you will never get to work on time because you're going to be stuck in some traffic jam, some congestion. But and how about now? We can't be just complaining. What do we have to do? We have two challenges that we have to achieve. First of all, we have to fix our present. Our city, it's already full of different problems. We need to fix these problems. But more than that, we have to plan our future. Because our city will still keeping growing. So we need to, from now, thinking about a better future for our city. With these two actions, we're going to have a better cities for everyone. And for everyone, it's an important thing to memorize, and we're going to show this later, because we need a city for people, for everybody, for everyone, not just for some groups. And how about the actual revolution in urban mobility? What I mean? Well, all of us, we are seeing on the news, on the university, academic areas, some companies, we are having a truly mobility revolution in the current time, talking about urban mobility or mobility in general, not just urban. For example, we have the advent of mobility application on the last decade, such as Uber, Cabify, etc. For example, this is something that is not helping us about urban mobility because we have more cars in the streets. And how about the fast growth of e-commerce, especially after COVID-19? We need more logistics in our cities to deliver all the things that we are buying by internet. And the change in the young behavior, the young people, 18 years old, for example, concerned to driver license. Here in Brazil, when you get 18, you can take your driver license. And around maybe 10, 20 years ago, the young people got nuts to get their driver license. But this today is not happening in the way that this happened 20 years ago. Because the people think, well, I can use Uber, I can use Cabify, I can go by walking, I can go by bus. Because if I was in my car and I want to drink, I will not able to drink and drive. So this is changing the way that the people are thinking about. They don't need anymore to have a car. They need to have access to transport. More than that, we are now designing electric cars, autonomous cars, flying cars. Why not? You're going to see this in the next years. I have no doubt about it. Car sharing, carpooling, working, studying remotely, and doing a lot of activities remotely, especially after COVID-19. Smart and connected cities, mobility as a service, and a totally different world after COVID-19. Mobility has been really affected by COVID-19. In some of these things, it will be good for our mobility, such as working or studying remotely. We have less people, less trips, less traffic demand. And now I'm gonna ask you this question: are the cities from developing countries prepared for this revolution? Well, I'm afraid that we are not totally able for this revolution. For example, we have a lot of basic issues to solve it before such as public transportation is in decline. We are losing passengers day by day because of several different reasons, such as the price of applications such as Uber and Cabify, the price of motorcycles, the growing use of cars and motorcycle, as I said, poor infrastructure for active modes and disabled people. We can see this on our picture. Poor prioritization of public transport, insufficient traffic safe measures, and this is a huge problem that we are dealing with today, nowadays. Lack of effective public policies to urban mobility. Just in big cities, we have some technical professionals to think about these kind of problems. Well, lack of technical professionals, we have this issue. A poor vision of sustainable mobility. We have a lot of problems to solve that it's not always that the environmental, it's one of the things that we use to analyze. I mean, not all cities in developing countries, but the most cities in our countries, it's small cities or medium cities, and these cities, they are not like able to do this job by themselves. Well, and a poor vision of environmental issues that I said, and among others problems. Well, guys, therefore, we have a lot of issues to work on. Let's do it. We can't just be here complaining about. We have to do something. We have to put our hands on that and work to improve our country, to improve our cities. And I'm asking you how to solve the urban mobility issues. So, something that I really like to say here to my colleagues in the company, and or even my friends in social life, is that you have to pray for the best, but you need to be prepared for the worst. Because in this way, we're not going to do here just sit looking the problems in the city. Well, how I would like to have a nice city. No. Once that you are prepared for the worst, you have to work on it. You have to do something. So if we want a different city, let's make it happen. And how do we do that? As I said before, fixing our present and planning our future. And how to do that? Well, anything in our life, we have to plan our actions. We need to plan what we desire, what we want to get. And talking about urban mobility, it's the same. So we have three basic questions. First of all, what city do you have? It's a city with huge infrastructure to bicycle, or it's a city that has a nice public transport, or no, it's a city that there is no good public transport, there is no good policy to pedestrians. What are the problems that we have today? So what city do you have? Which city do you have? What city do we want to have in the future? So this is where we're going to have our guidelines. Which city do I want? I want a city for vehicles, for cars. I want a city for people. I want to improve I want to enhance the utilization of bicycle. What are our guidelines? And last but not least, what do we need to do to have the city? So now we have a lot of actions to do. We have to make plans, we have to make designs, we have to do a lot of things to improve our city, to get the city that we want to have. In this moment, we have this document, an urban mobility plan. What is an urban mobility plan? Well, here in Brazil, we have this guideline to teach us how to develop an urban mobility plan. And here we can see the definition. Mobility plans in Brazil. It's a research or a study developed to guide the future of the mobility in that city, in our city, in the city that we're going to be working on. And the law 12,587 from 2012, here in Brazil, this law requires a mobility plan to every city that is bigger than 20,000 inhabitants, or cities that are in metropolitan areas, or cities that are in areas of tourist interest. And if I don't have a mobility plan, well, you're going to have a penalty, and it's a serious one, because you're not going to have access to federal financial resources for urban mobility and infrastructure. So if you are a mayor of the city, I advise you should make your mobility plan, otherwise you're not going to have money to improve your city. And this is the right thing, because this helps us to put our money in something that was planned before. Well, 10 principles for mobility planning. First of all, decreasing need for motorized trips. Rethinking urban design. Rethinking vehicle circulation. Developing non-motorized means of transport. Recognizing the importance of pedestrians' movement. Reducing the environmental impacts of urban mobility. Providing mobility to disabled people, and prioritizing public transport, promoting integration of different modes of transport, and structuring local management of our urban mobility. Here in Brazil, unfortunately, 76% of all cities that we have in this huge country, there is no urban mobility plan, and more than that, is not preparing yet. Just 18% of the city has a plan, and just 6% is preparing a plan. So we can see, guys, we have a lot of work to do. So if you are a professional, if you are from this area, maybe you can come to help us, because we have a lot of cities to do it. And now, just some ideas how to make a mobility plan. We have some guidelines. Our effort and guideline must focus on road, transport, and logistics. But please, when I say roads, I'm not just saying let's put more lane for cars and let's just make more overpass. No, we need a road system for people, for all modes. And for example, here we have these areas that it's concerned to road transport and logistics. What I mean, we need to think road transport and logistics, but thinking about ground use and occupation, because this is too close. There's a huge relation with urban mobility. Active transport, we need to improve our condition to active transport. Sustainability, we need to think about our future. We need to have this word not just for us, but for our kids and more another generations. We need to keep our word. And road safety, we need to stop kill people in our roads. Accessibility, the city needs to be for everyone. And we need to do that together with our citizens. We need to do this with governance and popular participation. We can't do a planning for a city. We need to do a plan with the city, with the people. It's a really important thing. Here, I'm going to give you guys two examples of urban mobility plans. The first one is the city of Volta Redonda, in the state of Rio de Janeiro, here in Brazil. And if you are not from Brazil, maybe you should think that our capital is Rio de Janeiro, and it's not. Our capital is Brasilia. But Rio de Janeiro is the most famous city in Brazil, for sure. There is no doubt about it. Well, let's see this picture. We have a river in the middle of our city. We have an airport here in the middle of our city. We have a railroad here in our city. And here, I'm going to show better in the next screen. We have a factory, a big one here in the middle of our city. Guys, I'm going to tell you something. A lot of things makes this city the most difficult city to work that I have already worked in my life. We have several physical barriers in our city. Here is a map of that. So we have our railroad, we have our river, we have our airport, we have this entire area. It's one company, a steelwork company, and on these red lines are the few points that you have to cross from the north part of the city to the south part of the city. So thinking about making a mobility plan, the first thing that we have to do is to read our city. We need to understand about the morphology of our road system. This is the principal thing that we have to do. And here we have an image of this big company that we have in the middle of the city that make our problems a little bit bigger. And more than that, we have problems with the transport, the quality of the transport, lack of cycle infrastructure. And in this city, there is a lot of cyclists, and they really want to get to have a better infrastructure to use their bike. Here are some images that illustrate a little bit the city for us. So you have like some problems in our signs. We have some holes in the pavement. We have some narrow streets, lack of infrastructure for pedestrians. This is the point where we are making our diagnosis, when we are identifying the city that we have. And we have to do that question, what kind of city do you want to? What kind of city do you have? Do you want to have? And beginning for this one, on our bottom right side of the screen, we need to do this with the citizens. We need to do this with the people, not making the plan for them, but with them. So this is a meeting, and we have done a lot of meetings with the citizens of the city, and we decided together that we will have to do the prioritization of the things in this order. First, we need to prioritize our city for people, for active modes. Second, we have to do that for public transport. Transport that carry more people occupying less space in the road. And third place, because we still need the motorized vehicles, we have to do we have to consider the cars and any other motorized modes. And here we have our guideline for the city. Create new forms of connection between the north part and south part. I showed you guys this is a huge problem in the city. We need to have a cycle network, efficient public transport, fewer freight vehicles during rush hours, because we need to plan better our logistics, like some hubs outside of the city. We need to plan that, how to do it. Improvement in revitalization of sidewalks and pedestrian crossings, and an adequate infrastructure for active transport. This is our guidelines. And here, just some examples of our proposals that we have done. For example, more than 100 kilometers of cycle paths and several changes at the traffic circulation to improve the traffic operation. Like this street was one way, now it's two way. We have a lot of changes like that. Here we had proposed BRT, a bus rapid transit, on this screen, on this route in red. And I'm not going to show you the points, but just to illustrate, we have done a lot of proposals to improve, to enhance our traffic safety, get some results up to 80% of crash reductions in the place that we have worked. This table, it's really, really important. Is where I want to start to leave my idea for you guys about the future of our cities. Please pay attention. Today, in this city, the year of 2015, we had 41 kilometers of traffic jam in the city. And we have done a lot of proposal number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is a lot of combinations of things that we have done for the city about infrastructure, about public transport, several areas. And with all this proposal, we could get just 20 kilometers of traffic jam. So we could reduce 50% of our problems in traffic operation in the peak hour. We reduce 50% our congestion. Wow, we can get so happy. Ooh, we have done a real nice job, but not. Let's see now the year of 2020, just 5 years later, okay? With all propositions that we have done, we're gonna have 40 kilometers again of traffic jam. And 5 years later, we're gonna have 72, 120. So what can we realize with that? That if we're gonna just keep improving our infrastructure, we're not gonna be able to really improve our traffic operation. Because if we don't change our model split of passenger transport in our city, we won't be able to make significant changes or improvements in the traffic operation in the future. We need to make the people use more public transport or carpooling or active modes, because we will never be able to make a nice city to everybody goes in their cars alone in the morning with listen to a good music. This is impossible. We have no space to do it. And here is a GIF that shows us if we do nothing in the city, what is going to happen in the future. So of course, we're going to have more and more problems in our traffic operation, in traffic jam, congestion. Well, let's see another example to this city that I really like. I like so much this city, and I have been working in this city for more than 10 years. That is Santo Domingo, the capital of Dominican Republic. And I advise you guys, if you haven't been there, you should go. It's a really nice country. It's a really nice city. So we have almost the same problems that we have in all big cities in the world, especially in developing countries. For example, we have discontinuity of the road system, significant through traffic in the central area, no prioritization of the public transport, poor infrastructure to active modes, unoptimized intersections, and limited access on the central area. For example, here in this big area, there is the National District of Santo Domingo. We have just 8 points to access our principal area of the city. And in the rush time or the peak hour, it's really common to see images like that. Okay, I think that I forgot to say, if you wanna may ask some question, you can go to the chat and write down, because at the end of our presentation, we're gonna be talking for 10, 15 minutes, okay? So do your question, ask your question. So you're gonna make me feel that there's a lot of people here paying attention, because today, this modern life, this life post-COVID-19, we feel like I'm talking alone here in my office, or there is a lot of people listen to me, because this is really common today in our meetings, in our remotely work. So please ask question, but please ask easy question. Don't put me in trouble, okay? And here, what do you have to do in this city to improve our city? So this here just an image to illustrate the several traffic simulations that we have done in the city. It is a part of our network of simulation that I'm going to show you guys a little bit better later. And here are some proposals that we have done, like specific improvements in 84 points, traffic light reduction plan, implementation of road corridors, optimization traffic lights, overpass design, among others. A lot of things that we have done in our city. And here, I apologize. I'm going to show you guys a video, but unfortunately, the text, it's in Spanish. So it's an opportunity to practice your Spanish, and I'm going to be talking some things about during the video. So it's a plan, urban mobility plan in Santo Domingo, and we have 5 areas of action in this urban mobility plan. Here we are showing that we have constructed our network to simulate the entire city. Of course, we used the Google to help us to improve our network, but of course we had been in the city to see the roads, to feel the traffic, and we have done a lot of counting cars in the city. Here are some points that we had evaluated an optimized form to improve our traffic light. And here we have a simulation 3D and 2D as well. For example, we were eliminating a left turn in this intersection, but we kept this turn using a square that we had close by. Here we had a lot of avenues that unfortunately didn't operate as a corridor, and we had to make a lot of improvements in the infrastructure of these avenues and these roads to make them operate as an arterial road. And of course, here's just the simulation to show a little bit of the proposal that we have done. Here are some examples of the macro simulation of the city. And what would happen with our city if we do something and if we didn't do anything. So for example, we could improve the city 21%. If you see more green color, it means that we have a better situation. So for the different proposals, we were studying how much our city it was getting better. As much we have more green in our image, it means that our city it's better in terms of traffic jam, of operation and congestion, especially in peak times, the rush time. And here we can see how it was our city and how it's going to be our city with all proposals that we have done. As much you can see red color, it means that we have a traffic jam, a congestion. So we can see that in the right part of our screen. We have less red color, so it means that we could improve our city with our proposals. And okay, we had finished our video. The principal thing that I want to leave to you guys, and I have already said that today, doing nothing in the scenario actual, we have more than 200 kilometers of traffic jam in our city. In 3 years, even that we doing several improvements, we're gonna have 200 and a half kilometers. So even that we are doing a lot of improvements in our network, in our road system, our congestion is gonna be higher, bigger than we have today. But here we have 172. But what is this scenario? Changing our modal split. Make people leave their car and start to use public transport or active modes. And we just achieve traffic improvements if we change the passenger modal split. So where should we focus on? We are almost in the end of this presentation. Reducing urban trips, remote work, living close to work, complete land user, where you can do a lot of things close to your home. More people in less space. Change our passenger modal split. Increase public transportation use, active modes, carpooling, car sharing. Trips in more sustainable modes. Car sharing, carpooling again, electric cars, less emission, a better environment. Cities planned for people, not cars. Pedestrian areas, cycle paths, lanes. And more than that, we need to take advantage of the technology and to have more smart and connected cities. Optimized urban logistics. And a final thought that I want to really leave for you guys. Here we have 48 people use, or we have 48 people in common cars. Here we have 48 people, or we have 48 people in electric cars. In here we have 48 people, or 48 people in autonomous cars. And what I want to leave as a reflection for you guys. The physical laws will always be the same. Well, I believe. Two different bodies will never occupy the same space at the same time in the universe. So, even that we have a lot of technology that will, for sure, help us to improve our mobility conditions, we need to keep this in mind. We need an urban mobility with less cars in the streets, or moving people occupying less space. And here it's an illustration of an action that the people from the Department of Transit here in my city has done to make a city for people, not just a city for cars. And to finish our presentation, our lecture, even with all technology that is changing the mobility nowadays, if we don't reduce the trips or achieve changes in the passenger modal split, we will not be able to really improve the urban mobility in our cities. Now, guys, dear colleagues of our technical area, I really thank you for being with us, for being here, listen to me. And now, I would like to thank you again to Florida Atlantic University for having me, and I'll be able to answer some questions if we do have some questions. Let me open the chat here.
Thank you, Dr. Rodrigues. It was great to see your presentation. It was a great presentation, and it was different from all the other presentations that we have because we always see the state of urban mobility here in the US. So seeing a contrast in other countries is great. So now we open the floor for any questions. And as mentioned, you can either type in the chat or you can unmute yourself. There is an option to like raise a hand if you want to use it. So to start the question session, I'm going to ask you a question. The
Okay.
greatest difference between developed and developing countries is that developed countries have been planning for urban growth, and it's something commonplace. It's something that it's being applied all the time. And it is common for developing countries to follow the mobility trends being applied in developed countries with a certain delay for technology, for example.
Yeah.
Do you think developed countries can also benefit from certain mobility trends being applied in developing countries?
Well, I think so, but you need to, for example, make a segregation of developed countries. For example, you can consider Europe and United States. They have a different way uh, how these countries see the urban mobility, especially in the last 100 years. For example, you are in Boca Raton. It's a really, really nice city that I have been around a couple of times. We have streets with more streets and avenues anyway, with more space that we have in Europe, for example. And what in Europe this doesn't happen. So what do we here in developing countries can learn from you guys that we are in developed countries? What have you already done that worked, and what you have already done that is not working? So we can take advantage of that. We can look at you guys and see what we can learn once that you have done this a couple of decades ago.
That's great, thank you. I think I have one question here. All right, yeah. I have a question from Fabio. In the case studies, you mentioned the expected number of kilometers with oversaturation in different future scenarios. What other common performance measures are required in urban mobility plans, such as vehicle miles traveled, travel time, level of service?
Yeah. Well, here I just gave an example, but we study a lot of different indicators of mobility conditions in this kind of study. Even we consider environmental base, for example, delay, density, traffic density, we consider a lot. Level of service, it's a really nice parameter when we are doing a comparison between scenarios. So we use this as well. And here I just use this as an example, but be sure that we consider, for example, around 10 different indicators to check our proposal. And sometimes we do like a hierarchization of these indicators, because sometimes we can improve one, and another one we just can decrease the quality of that indicator. So we need to make a hierarchization of do we want to this city for this city.
All right, thank you. Do you have?
Hello, I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, all right, you can ask it.
This is Mashak. Yes, thank you for the for the presentation. Yes, I live in a third world city, while at the same time I work in a first world city. I know the parallels very well, and my question is with regards to, the concept that you are trying to, to utilize or to employ, that is planning with the city, not planning for the city.
Yeah.
But with the models that you've developed, the microsimulations or microsimulation model, or the macro, the travel demand model that you develop, how do you take into consideration the social and or the sociocultural aspects in your model? And the second question is with regards to whether you do test policy measures, for instance, congestion charging, low emission zones. Have you tested these policy measures and or to determine how the model or your models behave? And lastly, is with regards to a recent study that was done by, I think, New York University, who stated that with these mobility measures, car sharing, cities tend to, the congestion levels in cities tend to increase. And of course, in developing nations, or cities in developing nations, you increase and mass systems like Ubers. There is some level of congestion that do occur. I don't know if you've been able to test this. Thank you.
Okay, let me see if I didn't forget any question. Well, first of all, to take in account in our models how we're gonna get improvement in our micro simulation, talking about changes in the model split. So we have done some scenarios where we consider, for example, the city we're gonna put to the people some policies to attract people to use more their bicycle, for example. And during the construction of the plan, we made a lot of research to identify, for example, if you have a cycle lane from your home until 200-meter distance from your work, would you start to use your bicycle to go to work? So with this kind of question, we could realize the effect of some improvements that we were doing to try to identify how many people would we be able to attract it for active modes or for public transport. In this way, we could simulate that in our model. This is one thing. I think this was your first question, right? What is the third one is about the policy. The policy. Okay. Well, this is.
I think the second one is if you have tested environmental variables, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, as I showed here, let me come back here. Let me see where it is. Here, for example, reduction in CO2 up to 25%. So we used some models that there is a relation with micro simulation to take this for, no, sorry. We have used a model that is used in micro simulation, and we bring this to the micro simulation to try to understand what that kind of improvement could help us to reduce the CO2 emission. And for example, the number of cars. When we reduce the number of cars, improving the use of public transport or bicycle lanes, whatever, we can reduce the CO2 emissions. And I think that the last question was about policy. So there is no way. We have to decide some policies that we need to implement in our cities. But for example, we didn't do some strong policies, such as to consider a toll to get into the city. We have already not done that, because we were making some kind of policies that are softer in this moment. Like, for example, in Volta Redonda, another city, we are trying to encourage the industrial area to put a place to take shower and to keep the bicycle of the people that decide goes to work using bicycle. And even that, more than that, here in Brazil, it's usual the companies pay for the transport of their employees. So they would keep paying the transport for their employees, even that they would be using their bicycle to go to work. So it's really important, this kind of policies, when we are finishing a urban mobility plan, because this will guide us for the results that we are waiting for. I hope that I could have answered your questions.
All right. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Thank you.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
I do have one more question, and this is going to be the last one, so that we don't pass too much for the set time that we have. I'd like to know, in the case you showed to us, how many kilometers on the city of San Domingo has, and how many years you could consider the city locked by the traffic jam?
Well, I could say that this is the question of 1 million. Well, I cannot tell you today how many kilometers do we have. I can tell you how much kilometers do we used to have in 2015 when we have done this project. It was 212. And more than that, when the city will be locked with the traffic jam, this is like a question to God, because there's several different things. For example, Santo Domingo nowadays, I'm with them in the Instagram. I can see what they are doing, and they are doing a lot of really nice programs. For example, to encourage people to use bicycle and active modes, and they are preparing to improve their public transport network. So we'll be always like we're gonna get in the city worse, each more worse. But the people, the government will never stop to try to do something. So they will be always trying to improve. So if you ask me, someday, one city, any city in the world, you're gonna definitely stop, I don't believe that. Of course, the traffic is gonna be worse and worse. For example, I have worked in Lima, and to drive 14 kilometers, we expended around every day 2 hours and a half. I think that it was one of the worst situations that I have lived in my life. I hope that I could just try to answer, because your question is really, really tough one. But thanks for the question, Marcelo.